wealthy Washington neighborhood, a burning mansion, and a terrible secret.
The fire appears to be intentionally set.
Inside, a mother, father, 10-year-old son, and the family housekeeper, all dead.
It shook that community to the core, especially when those horrific details started to come out about what happened inside that house.
They had been held hostage for almost 20 hours, sending mysterious messages to the outside world.
Amy is in bed sick tonight.
I start calling them. What's going on? No answer.
Arranging their own ransom.
He says he got a call to bring $40,000 cash to the house.
But it doesn't save the helpless captives, murdered in cold blood. Now, police are left to follow the clues left behind. The burning car, the shadowy figure caught on surveillance cameras, the telltale takeout meal.
Tries to burn the house down, but guess what doesn't burn? The pizza with his saliva on it.
Boom, they get a hit. We've got a name, we've got a face.
But they still don't have their suspect, a convicted criminal with a history of violence.
He has a rap sheet as long as my arm.
Did he know the victims?
He's found outside with a machete, a BB gun, and a can of beer.
And where is he now?
We were able to determine that he had fled the D.C. area.
We were distributing his photograph as widely as possible.
A manhunt is on as another troubling question lingers.
There was major concern that Darren Wynn had nothing to lose. Were people going to get hurt?
Mystery in the mansion. Welcome to 2020 on ID. I'm John Quinones. It was a crime so horrific it grabbed national headlines. But long after it was over, after evidence had been examined and a suspect caught, lingering questions remained. What went on inside the house of Amy and Savas Savopoulos for almost 20 hours? Did the killer act alone? And perhaps most haunting, why would someone target this family? As Ryan Smith first reported in 2015, it's a story of lives intertwined, simmering rage, and a tragedy no one saw coming.
It wasn't supposed to be like this. Two teenage sisters mourning their murdered parents and little brother. Their multi-million-dollar home boarded up, surrounded by a locked chain-link fence, starkly out of place in this quiet, leafy D.C. neighborhood. An abrupt ending to a love story that seemed destined to play out as happily ever after. A love story that starts in high school. Amy Martin and Savas Savopoulos meet at Springbrook High School in Silver Spring, Maryland, just north of Washington, D.C. They both decide to attend the University of Maryland, where a popular and outgoing Savas spends the next 4 years pursuing the beautiful but shy Amy.
Savas had a crush on her for all 4 years and pursued her and pursued her and pursued her, and she would never say yes until the very end. She finally agreed to go on a date, and the sorority sister said, "Thank God," because they seemed like a perfect match for each other.
He, a fifth-generation Washingtonian, the son of a metalworks company CEO. She, a self-described Army brat whose family moved often. After college, the couple has a large Greek Orthodox wedding at Washington, D.C.'s St. Sophia's Cathedral. Their wedding picture, seen on their daughter's Instagram account, set up as a tribute.
What were they like together?
They love each other. Yeah,
Their housekeeper of 2 decades, Nelly Gutierrez, says the Savopoulos were the picture-perfect couple.
In my 19 years, 20 years working for the family, they never fight. They were so good together. He really loved Amy, very, very deep. And the same way, you know, she was the same way.
They would have 3 children, Abigail, 19, Katerina, 16, and Philip, 10.
What about Philip, though? He's 10.
He was very, very mature. Like, he was very funny. You know, like when I always talk to him in Spanish, he gets so excited. But then when I talk to him a little bit more, he's like, no, I don't understand.
An incredibly tight-knit family, embodied by pictures posted as a memorial slideshow on the funeral home's website.
They adored each other. They were incredibly close.
Family friend Elizabeth Blaylock.
The parents loved those children, and the children had a wonderful relationship with each other. They were what everybody wants for their own family.
At the center of Amy's world, her kids.
She would call her girls her little pearls because she saw each one as so precious and rare and something to be cherished. And she called Philip her little prince. And she loved those children like I have rarely seen a mother love their children.
Sava, known for a strong work ethic and gentle manner, succeeds his father as CEO of American Iron Works, supplying metal not to your local five and dime, but projects like these.
The restoration of the Pentagon after 9/11, the new convention center, major hotels. So it wasn't a particularly sexy business, it was a very successful business.
Settling in as a young, wealthy Washington couple, they buy this gabled, red brick home in 2001 with its own library and music room, surrounded by manicured lawns, hedges, and gates.
You notice that as soon as you walk in the neighborhood, you see embassies just a block away. And Joe Biden's home is not more than a mile away from where they live.
So this is one of the most established neighborhoods in Washington. We're talking not only a stone's throw from the vice president's house, but this is sort of a billionaire's enclave. You'll have titans of industry, billionaires, senators, congressmen, ambassadors.
The Savaopoulos listed in Washington's Green Book, a who's who of D.C. elite. And as part of the D.C. elite, the Savaopoulos have money, a private jet, and a 44-foot yacht. And in 2012, while the girls are away in boarding school, the parents are living large with son Philip in the Virgin Islands.
They decided to sort of play hooky for a year. They rented a home that was on an island. So Amy would have to put Philip in a dinghy and row across a waterway to get him to school.
But the Savaopoulos weren't just living lives of selfish opulence. They were, in fact, incredibly charitable.
They were generous of their time and their money. They donated $100,000 to NCS, which was where their two girls went to school before going to boarding schools. Amy, every year for her son's class, used to buy everyone gingerbread houses at Christmas time, and she would come in and help put them together. So every boy wanted to be in his class.
The parents were also grateful to have Amy as a friend.
I had a daughter who was very sick when she and Philip were in kindergarten together, and Amy showed up at my door with a gift in hand because she didn't want my daughter to miss out on the fun that they had had that day in school.
And as their contemporaries would be playing golf and tennis at the Congressional Country Club, Sava's passion? Kenjutsu, an ancient form of samurai swordsmanship, studying the art form for 20 years. He was even about to fulfill his dream of having his own martial arts center scheduled to open here in Chantilly, Virginia, the week after he was killed. Like his father, 10-year-old Philip, known as Flip, also had a somewhat atypical and expensive hobby: go-kart racing, traveling around the country, competing in his own kart with his own sponsor.
This is not the thing your normal 10-year-old gets to do. Philip had a coach, and he had a top-of-the-line go-kart, and Amy made her son do his homework between races.
And it's at one of these go-kart tracks that Sava Savaopoulos meets this man. Fellow racing enthusiast, 28-year-old Jordan Wallace. Wallace creating his own website with videos of the extreme sport.
My life is awesome. Like, I have nothing to complain about.
Their friendship would lead to a job as Sava's personal assistant, and Wallace would end up playing a pivotal role in those final hours before that quadruple murder.
That assistant says he got a call from Sava Savaopoulos to bring $40,000 cash to the house.
Was it an armed robbery gone wrong, or a calculated murder for hire? Questions that would confound police and this once peaceful neighborhood.
I talked with several neighbors who said that they saw Philip playing in the driveway. They would see Amy walking around the neighborhood exercising. Now passing by that house is an eerie feeling for these neighbors, one that will never go away.
So this had to shake them to their core.
It shook that community to the core. It shook the city to the core.
When we come back, a family held hostage for 20 desperate hours, and how those last hours were spent. Takeout food orders, a $40,000 cash drop, and a strange and eerily calm voicemail left for Nelly Gutierrez under duress.
Hey, Nelly, it's Sava. Amy is in bed sick tonight.
Stay with us. It's Wednesday, May 13, 2015, around 6 p.m. As Washington, D.C. is closing for the night and people are sitting in traffic, the Savopoulos family, with their teenage girls away at boarding school, are trying to survive the most desperate night of their lives. It begins that afternoon with a terrifying home invasion. Also inside the mansion, the family's housekeeper, Vera Figueroa. She had been with the Savopoulos family since her friend and the family's other housekeeper, Nellie Gutierrez, got her the job.
You helped her work with the Savopoulos family, right?
Yes, and I took her over there. And it was like almost 5 years ago.
So tell me about Vera. What was she like?
She loved her job. Every time when she was like 10 or 15 minutes late, she always asked me, can you call Amy? And I said, don't worry, it's 10, 15 minutes, it's okay. But she was always wants to be on time. She was so responsible.
That Wednesday, Vera was supposed to leave work around 3 p.m. But by 5, her husband, Bernardo Alfaro, has not been able to reach his wife. He tells WJLA reporter John Gonzalez he begins to worry.
He goes home, starts calling her nonstop on her cell phone until the cell phone really stops ringing.
Around 9 that evening, one of the captives, Sava Savopoulos, leaves a voicemail telling Gutierrez not to come in the next day.
Hey, Sava, I hope you get this message. Amy is in bed sick tonight, and she was sick this afternoon, and Vera offered to stay and help her out, so she's going to stay the night here.
But Gutierrez won't get the message until the next morning. Also around 9 p.m., the strangest call by far, a call for a food delivery.
We can confirm that we made a delivery to the house.
Police say it's Amy Savopoulos calling Domino's Pizza. She orders 2 pies, gives a credit card number, and special instructions.
Don't ring the doorbell. I'm caring for a sick child. Just leave it on the front door.
The Domino's driver says the porch light is on, but the house is dark. As instructed, the driver leaves the pizza, rings the bell, and drives away, taking with him an opportunity to end the ordeal for the terrified people just inside.
There were things that happened that, of course, now we can look back on and say, what if?
Unbelievably, somebody in that house in these dark and brutal hours has an appetite, gobbling up most of the pepperoni pie, leaving a crust or two. Legal consultant Nancy Grace has followed this case.
To think that the killer actually ordered and ate a pizza during the middle of all this? I couldn't even eat after I heard about it. This guy's eating a pizza in the middle of it.
That night, Sava Savopoulos calls his assistant, Jordan Wallace, the man the family met at that go-kart track, making arrangements for a package to be delivered to the mansion the next morning. Longtime crime reporter Jennifer Donnellan has been covering the story for ABC affiliate WJLA.
Tell me about the call the assistant got.
He says he got a call from Savopoulos to bring $40,000 cash to the house.
Police say that Wallace responded by text. Got your message. I'll call once I get the package. The longest night passes on Woodland Drive. As Thursday dawns, housekeeper Vera Figueroa's husband, after working an overnight shift, finds his wife still not home. He goes to the mansion looking for her.
Knocks on the door, rings the doorbell, nothing. But it's interesting. He says, it felt to me like someone was inside.
Could he hear them?
He just says he heard like noises, like someone shuffling inside.
Just then, his phone rings. It's Sava Savopoulos inside the house. They're just a few feet apart.
He says, Lito, I'm sorry I didn't call you last night. Vera stayed the night with us. And he said that he was apologizing profusely. So the husband, a little more satisfied with that, the fact that he's heard from someone, he goes home.
Meanwhile, Nellie Gutierrez hears a message from Sava. She listens to the one he sent her the night before, telling her not to come to work. She tries to call back and attempts to reach Vera.
When I got that message, I was thinking, and I start calling them. So I call her and I say, hi Vera, what's going on? No answer.
That morning, the next phase of the plan becomes apparent. Jordan Wallace meets another employee at a bank near Savopoulos' company, American Iron Works. He gets 4 neat stacks of $100 bills, 40 grand, calls his boss for further instructions.
Savas Savopoulos tells his assistant to bring the cash to his house, come into the garage, the car is unlocked.
Not to give it to him, but to put it in a car, which you would think would set off alarm bells.
And then you wonder, why didn't that person call police?
Before Wallace makes the drop, police records show he sent a text at 9 a.m. to a woman with a picture of the cash. The woman responded, "Damn, I wonder how much it is." Wallace replies, "40. Wallace heads to the Savopoulos home and drops the cash on the driver's seat of a red sports car. At 10:26 a.m., Wallace sends this text message to his boss. Package delivered. The cash is dropped, but for some reason, that doesn't stop the crime. Police say the killing begins.
We were getting source information that there was blunt force trauma to the bodies, that there were stab wounds to the bodies, that the bodies also had been tied up.
The family's terrifying final moments alive, pieced together from police documents and ABC News sources. The three adults, Sava and Amy Savopoulos and Vera Figueroa, are held in an upstairs bedroom. The women are restrained. Sava is not. Why do you think they moved the victims upstairs?
Because they have less profile.
ABC News tracked down these blueprints of the home, which we reviewed with former FBI agent Brad Garrett.
If you left a window open, left a curtain open, you could see what's going on. If you move them up, it's more difficult to see what's going on.
The adults sustained terrible fatal wounds. They were hit and stabbed. Police revealing a baseball bat with what appeared to be blood on it was discovered in the room. The little boy, Philip, separated from the grown-ups in another bedroom.
The son is where it appears, according to court documents, is where they set that fire. The fact that the three adults were in one room, you have to wonder how much the suspects were using that son as a point to extort them.
To think that a human would torture and murder a 10-year-old little boy while his mother and father sit in the next room hearing him scream in order to get money, it's heinous.
It tells you they don't really care about other human beings, and they want what they want. And then what happened at some point, this became survival mode for the bad guys. We're going to kill them, we're going to set the house on fire, they'll never be able to link us to this.
Once 10-year-old Philip's room is set on fire, the killers flee. Before the fire can spread to where the adults are, the fire department gets the alarm.
3201 Woodland Drive, three-story detached house fire.
It's 1:30 p.m. on Thursday. The story blows up.
It's the case that is shaking the neighborhood to its core tonight.
This started out as a story about a fire, right?
Right. When the details first started leaking out, and you automatically start to wonder if it's murder-suicide. But when we learned that the father was also among the deceased and the mother was among the deceased, you then began to question what really happened here.
I've been here for 25 years and nothing like this ever happens.
Right now, everyone in the neighborhood's just a little shaken up. They're not sure really what to think.
The media descends on the neighborhood.
Crime scene investigators have been here all day long.
Early that afternoon, someone notices Amy Savopoulos' blue Porsche is missing from the house. Police ask the public for help, but it wasn't hard to find. Just follow the smoke. The Porsche torched in a church parking lot in Maryland.
Now, what came with that, which was critical, was surveillance video. They were able to capture video of a man exiting out of that car and leaving the scene. They immediately put that video out to the public.
Notice enhanced video shows a man carrying a white bucket. Jot that down. Back at the burned mansion, authorities are already sifting through the grisly scene, starting to ask how whoever did this got in the house in the first place.
They look for a door that has some vulnerabilities. For example, you have two French doors over here. The police are reporting that there was a French door kicked. There is a footprint on the door itself.
This is the picture. That print.
How much more difficult is it for them to try to figure this out with that house being burned so badly?
The whole reason why you set something on fire in a case like that is to get rid of evidence.
But getting rid of the evidence is not as easy as it seems. Not with the country's best crime fighters on the case.
They're going to comb through that house and try and find whatever evidence they can to close this case and to capture everyone involved.
When we come back, a microscopic clue in the strangest place and the daring late-night manhunt and takedown. U.S. Marshals tell us they're forced to do something they've never tried before.
And he said, move, go, go, go.
Stay with us.
Almost immediately after the murders of the Savopoulos family, a trail of voicemails and texts has helped law enforcement put together a timeline of their final hours. But police still face the most difficult task of identifying who killed the family. As Ryan Smith reports, they're about to get a very big break.
Police are on the scene of a deadly house fire.
4 people were found dead inside. It is the case that is shaking the neighborhood to its core tonight.
If the fire at 3201 Woodland Drive in Washington, D.C. had burned faster, if the Washington, D.C. firefighters had responded a little slower, the key evidence in the case might have been destroyed. The killer or killers of Sava, Amy and Philip Savopoulos, and Vera Figueroa might have gotten away with that terrible crime and those stacks of $100 bills. But the location of the crime, the nation's capital, gives authorities a special advantage.
This is Washington, D.C. We're unique in that sense. Our Metropolitan Police Department and our D.C. Fire Department is backed up by federal agencies.
The arson task force at the mansion includes the ATF, which boasts perhaps the one lab in the country best equipped to extract DNA from fire-damaged evidence. Greg Zarnopis is the deputy assistant director who runs the lab.
Typically, we're looking at debris from a fire scene.
This is where that strange delivery, the Domino's pizza, and those discarded pieces of crust comes back to bite the mansion home invader.
A slice of pizza crust broke this case wide open.
Crime scene specialists recover the leftover crusts. Nothing more than household garbage to you and me, but for them, the perfect serving of prime evidence.
The crime scene detectives go inside that house. They see 2 boxes of pizza, slices of crust still inside the box.
They rush the crust to the ATF lab, working around the clock.
Looking at food, when someone takes a bite of it, we could see if there's any DNA present.
Todd Bill, an ATF analyst, lifted the DNA profile off that pizza crust.
If there's something like in this situation where there's a violent offender, we can call the FBI and they will do a immediate search for that profile.
I have never seen a DNA hit turned around that quick. Never.
Tuesday, May 19th, only 5 days after the fire and the murders, a breakthrough.
Boom, they get a hit. We've got a name, we've got a face.
Darren Wint, 34 years old, big muscles and a rap sheet as long as his dreadlocks.
His DNA was on file because of that lengthy criminal record, and now we knew at least one person who was allegedly inside that house.
Now all they have to do is find him.
Thus begins an intense 48-hour nationwide manhunt.
From what I understand, the cars were right over here.
Robert Fernandez with the U.S. Marshals Service is part of the task force now hunting for Wint.
We try and draw a picture of relatives, locations where he's lived, friends, patterns of life.
They do this massive trail. It is an unbelievable investigation with the best in the business.
Then, exactly 1 week after the family had been taken captive in their mansion, authorities get a line on Wint.
We were able to determine that he had fled the D.C. area.
Allegedly loaded with thousands in cash, they say he chooses to travel by bus 200 miles north to Brooklyn, New York.
And that's his girlfriend's apartment, right?
That's his girlfriend's apartment. They deploy.
Police have identified the suspect accused of killing 4 people, and they think he is in our area.
But they're too late.
He saw himself on the news, from what we understand, and then fled the area.
And you just missed catching him.
That's right.
Wint hires a livery cab and amazingly heads right back to the epicenter of the manhunt, Washington, D.C.
We are distributing his photograph as widely as possible.
As the dragnet tightens, everyone worrying about one thing: the danger.
There was major concern that Darren Wint had nothing to lose. Were people going to get hurt?
A week after the murders and fire at the Savopoulos home, U.S. Marshals tracked the group to a Howard Johnson's in the D.C. suburb of College Park, Maryland.
We were getting tacked out, we call it. We have all the gear, helmets, the ballistic shields, the robots, we have rifles. We were making a plan to make entry once we determined what hotel room he was in.
You're going in ready for anything.
That's right.
And immediately, a surprise. The U.S. Marshals advance team notices Wint leaving the hotel, but he isn't alone.
That advance team radioed to us where they had a suspicion that he was in one of 2 vehicles that were right over here.
In one of those vehicles, Wint and 3 women. In the other, 2 more men.
At that moment, both of those vehicles left and turned northbound.
Didn't see that coming.
Not at all. But we're ready to roll with it.
Authorities tail the group, now traveling in a 2-vehicle caravan, a box truck with North Carolina tags, followed by a white Chevy Cruze.
How many cars are following him at this point?
Altogether, it could have been 25, maybe 30 vehicles.
What kind of risks are you thinking?
Somehow they separate, somebody jumps out of the car and runs. We've chased a lot of people, and it's easy to disappear at night.
At one point, the truck and car make a sudden U-turn, but apparently still do not know they're being followed by a small army of police. Moments later, authorities spring the trap, employing a daring maneuver to stop the cars cold.
It's called a vehicle pin blocking maneuver.
The marshal's cars surround the white Chevy and the box truck on all sides, and on the commander's go, the front car reverses, the rear car speeds forward, and 4 more cars surround the target vehicles on all sides.
Basically, pinning the car at 4 points and immobilizing it.
It's a tactic the marshals have never tried with a vehicle as large as a box truck.
So you had to do something you had never done before.
That's right, that's why I wanted the helicopter.
Air support is called in from Prince George's County PD, and the marshal in command on the ground waits for the perfect moment.
We finally got to the red light, and he said, "Move, go, go, go." I went around and blocked off the truck. I could see the drivers of the truck and the passenger just stopped. They were looking in their mirrors. They saw the lights, and they put their hands up.
Immediately?
Immediately. I think they were completely and totally startled and surprised.
So this is where it happened?
Yeah, right here.
In the rear passenger seat of the white Chevy, Darren Wint, trapped.
He followed commands. He got out. He crawled. He got on the ground. He was immediately handcuffed and brought over to a police vehicle, and he didn't say a word.
People were coming out of their homes. You could hear people asking to each other as they stood on their porches, "Is it him? Is it him?" The fact that this went down without incident, as they say, was a huge relief for everyone involved.
In the car Wint was driving in, police report finding clothing, an iPad, 2 knives, cash, and thousands of dollars in money orders. And in the box truck, even more cash.
What did you see?
Well, in the truck, I saw in the side compartment of the passenger door a big wad of cash, and it was $100 bills. You could tell it was hundreds.
Police say one of the people stopped with Wint converted at least $10,000 into those money orders.
It was the end of a painstaking 48-hour manhunt, no sleep. The nation has quite frankly watched this search go from D.C. to New York, now back here to the D.C. area, and now he is in custody.
Wint appears in Superior Court the next day, charged with first-degree murder while armed.
What was interesting to me, the cashier, instead of almost answering questions, led to even more questions.
Why?
People kept saying, there's no way he did this by himself.
He couldn't pull this off on his own. No way. I don't think he's got it up here.
The community wanted to see everybody who was responsible locked up at once, case closed.
But this case is not closed, not by a long shot. When we come back, a man who came face to face with Darren Wint at the wrong end of a knife. His memories of how he wields a weapon during an attack and how he lived to tell. Stay with us. A vexing criminal case. 4 people murdered. The house apparently torched to destroy any clues. But some evidence seems to have survived the blaze. A search warrant reveals hair, DNA, and fingerprints were removed from the scene. And yet only one suspect in custody, 34-year-old Darren Wint, linked to the case by the DNA evidence found on that Domino's pizza crust. Wint's family and friends have ducked the cameras. But out of the blue, a new player emerges. His former attorney, Robin Ficker, who takes the national stage to go out on a limb for Wint with outlandish observations.
He never eats pizza. He doesn't like pizza.
The bombastic Ficker makes sweeping statements about the innocence of a man he defended on a handful of traffic tickets.
I know him to be a kind, gentle, non-aggressive person, someone you wouldn't mind your grandmother going to lunch with.
Mr. Ficker says that he's really a gentle giant, that you'd want to sit down and have tea with your grandmother. Well, not my grandmother.
Clearly, Ficker hasn't done his homework.
I know that he does have a violent tendency to harm someone.
Michael Babcock speaks for the first time about his terrifying encounter with a knife-wielding Darren Wint.
I put my hands like this, and he just came in like this. He would be tried for my murder. It wasn't for me surviving it.
And Wint's case file reveals that Babcock is just one in a long trail of people who have been violently threatened and attacked by Wint. Yet when Wint emigrated from the South American country of Guyana to the U.S., His future seemed bright. 12 years before the Mansion murders, he landed a well-paying job as a welder at American Iron Works, the company owned by Savasavopoulos. But for reasons unknown, Wint left the company after only 2 years. And that's when things went south for him. While living in suburban Maryland, Wint's own father, shown here on his Facebook page, feared living with him, getting a protective order after he says Wint threatened to shoot him. A relative who didn't want to be named said Wint was known for his hair-trigger temper.
He's very hostile. He's arrogant. Everywhere he went, he fought with people. He fights with his father, with his brother, everybody.
By 2006, Wint picked up stakes and moved here to the quiet upstate New York town of Oswego, living in this apartment building. It's in this port city, nestled along Lake Ontario, where Michael Babcock is about to get into some hot water with Wint. We brought him back to the scene of his cousin's house, where Babcock was trying to get Wint to leave after his cousin complained. After an altercation, Wint suddenly attacked.
Darren had come out and was windmilling with the knives, and I went up like that and blocked, and this is where he stabbed me on the wrist. There was slices on my shirt and on my chest and my stomach from where I didn't even know he had caught me. I thought he just had stabbed me in my wrist.
Wint was arrested and ordered to stay away from Babcock. But while waiting for trial, he suddenly ambushed Babcock a second time on this bridge.
I didn't see it this time because it was really small, and he had the knife cup in his hand, and he swung and caught me in the neck right here.
Babcock was rushed to the emergency room, where he was told he was lucky to be alive.
When Darren stabbed me in the neck, if it would have been a little bit lower, the doctors told me that I would have died before I made it to the first hospital.
Wint was convicted of assault, but gets only 89 days in prison for both attacks. No sooner was he released than he stabbed another man in Oswego, causing substantial pain and bleeding, which required hospitalization. This time, Wint was hit only with a slightly stiffer sentence, 10 months in jail. After being released, Wint returned to Maryland, but with 3 strikes already against him, he was arrested again for assault, after his girlfriend said he choked, slapped, and punched her. Wint got a 30-day sentence and yet another protective order.
He has a rap sheet as long as my arm. And that gives a perfect example to the claim of revolving door justice.
Wint dates another girl, but the script is the same. He's arrested after threatening to kill her, her daughter, and her friends, telling her he's good with a knife and could kill them easily. But despite that graphic threat, Wint is convicted only for smashing the windows of his girlfriend's car. And as the years pass, Wint apparently had not forgotten his former employer. In 2010, he made a bizarre and menacing return to American Iron Works, the company he had left 5 years earlier.
He's found outside the American Iron Works with a machete, a BB gun, and a can of beer. So there's this weird incident that occurred outside of the very place where Savasavopoulos was president and CEO.
Although charged with concealing a deadly weapon, Wint was allowed to simply plead guilty to having an open container of alcohol and fined $919.
I wonder what those prosecutors are thinking now. I let that guy go on a lesser offense.
Wint was able to stay out of the courts for the next 5 years.
The suspect in that brutal murder at a Washington, D.C. mansion arrested. He was on the run.
The next time he surfaced was when he made national news as the prime suspect in the Savopoulos murder case.
Darren Wint's had a long criminal history. He's had some incidents where he's attacked people with knives.
For him to then take that a step further and get involved in potentially killing 4 people with a knife is really not a stretch based on his background.
Coming up, what about that carload of people who were with Wint when he was arrested? Could they be his accomplices?
Oh, there's clearly more people involved. You can't control 4 people for 19 hours by yourself.
Stay with us.
We also are learning new information. Authorities believe more than one person may have been involved.
He did not act alone, mark my words.
1 month after that horrific night on Woodland Drive, that's the big mystery. Was someone else involved?
Though Mr. Wynn is now incarcerated, our work is not done.
I was in the FBI for 30 years. I worked a lot of home invasions. It just doesn't make any sense that one guy could control 4 people for almost around the clock, confine them, constrain them, brutalize them, and then set them on fire.
Investigators are continuing the hunt for those accomplices, but where to look?
Did Savas have enemies?
No.
Not that you saw.
No.
Nellie Gutierrez worked as a Savapolis family housekeeper. Says she's known the family for 20 years.
Very good family. They were so nice, very good, happy about life.
With the potential for violent accomplices still at large, there are several unanswered questions that we know of. Number 1, motive.
I'm not totally convinced that it was just about money. You have a guy that's a millionaire, lives in a beautiful $5+ million house. You're going to ask for 40 grand? I mean, none of that works for me.
It was a mansion. It was loaded with expensive stuff, expensive jewelry, electronics.
The family was known to have an art collection. The art on the walls in the house, I'm sure, was worth way more than $40,000, as was the car that they torched.
Another question, why did Jordan Wallace change details of his story? Remember Wallace, who posted these videos on his enthusiasm for go-kart racing? Savapolis met Wallace working at the go-kart track, where he coached 10-year-old Philip in racing. Now hired as assistant and driver to Savapolis, he was tasked with delivering the $40,000 in cash to the house that horrible day. Yet when questioned about his role in dropping off the cash, police say he changed his account.
And the big question is why? Why are there these inconsistencies in his story?
First, the timing. He tells investigators Savapolis' instructions to bring the money came on Thursday, the day of the murders. But then police read a text on his phone and see that contact actually happened the night before.
Then after detectives confront him with a text message and show that, no, that's not the way it happened. And he says, yes, you're right. And he tells a different story.
Wallace also said at first he was given the money in a manila envelope, yet later changes that to a red bag. And finally, he claims to have found the keys and unlocked the Savapolis car where he had been told to leave the cash, yet later admitted it was unlocked when he arrived.
And while they may not be serious discrepancies, they are discrepancies, conflicts, nonetheless. And that raises a red flag.
But you have concerns when people flip-flop as to what's, is it this willful because they had some involvement? Are they confused? Or do they just not understand the question? I mean, people lie for a lot of different reasons, other than they had some involvement in the crime. So unless there's a tie, unless they're convinced he's connected to Wendt and other people they believe are involved in this case, then you don't really have anything.
The proof is in the pudding. He has not been arrested yet, nor has he been named a suspect.
Wallace has a clean record. We found just one traffic ticket to his name and seemed to love his job. Posting this photo on Instagram from inside Amy Savapolis' Porsche. Another day on the job. My office today is pretty nice.
Breaking news overnight. The suspect in that brutal murder at a Washington, D.C. mansion arrested. 5 others arrested with him.
Our next open question, who were the others arrested with Darren Wendt? And why were they quickly let go?
Why, at the very least, you didn't charge them with aiding and abetting a fugitive, because they obviously were with him. Because the idea that they don't know anything about what happened in that mansion is just pure fantasy.
Police find a large stack of hundreds in the truck, cash and money orders in the Chevy, and one occupant admits to buying at least $10,000 in money orders. At this point, we only know the name of one of Darren Wendt's 5 companions that day, his brother, Daryl Wendt.
It's still unclear to me how those people got released within a few hours. It does give you the potential mechanism then to track them. Who do they talk to? Who do they call? Who do they visit? All of the things that may lead you either to further corroboration they had some involvement or to somebody else in the crime.
Finally, is the burning Savapolis Porsche a clue that there are other suspects? It had been driven from the murder scene and found about 15 miles away.
At one point, someone was seen driving this Porsche that had short, close-cropped hair, but Wendt has long hair, long dreadlocks. What does that tell you?
It's always sounded like to me that somebody else drove that Porsche to that location, and that that's another player.
And remember that man caught on surveillance video fleeing the burning car? That white bucket we pointed out earlier could be another important clue. We noticed that it's similar to these buckets, found by police searching the home of Darren Wint's parents, the very place he'd been living at the time of the murders. Also found in the burnt Porsche, a lime green construction vest, perhaps like this, that matches several more found in the garage of the charred house.
Maybe they used that as a ruse to get into the house. I mean, if they knocked on the door and the housekeeper answered and they said, you know, we're from the gas company and we think you have a gas leak, she's probably going to let you in.
I asked housekeeper Nellie Gutierrez if those vests could have belonged to the Savopoulos family.
Did you ever see anything like that when you were there?
No.
Meanwhile, moving trucks appeared at the Savopoulos house, clearing out the belongings of lives cut tragically short. And the surviving daughters, Abigail and Katerina, returned perhaps a final time to what was once their home, now the crime scene of their nightmares.
What do you say to the Savopoulos' teen daughters?
That I love them.
Nellie Gutierrez, who helped get her fellow housekeeper Vera hired, now misses her and the rest of the family every day.
It's very hard. And sometimes people, they don't realize that how hard it is when you care for a person like Amy or this family. They are my friend. And I learned a big lesson, so many lessons after this. That life is very short, because today is today and tomorrow you never know what's going to happen.
Darren Wint was later indicted on 20 counts, including first-degree murder, kidnapping, first-degree burglary, and arson. If convicted, he faces life in prison. As of 2016, Wint has pled not guilty to all charges, and no other arrests have been made in the case. The Savopoulos home, which was heavily damaged by the fire, was later sold. The new owner filed a permit to have it demolished. I'm John Quinones. Please join us next time for another edition